Are you looking to get a perfect score on the digital SAT or PSAT, and are you wondering what it takes? My name's Brooke. I have coached students to perfect scores on the latest paper version of the SAT. I've scored perfectly on the SAT as an adult, and I am creating a full online course for this version of the SAT, of the digital SAT. So I'm going to talk you guys through what is it going to take to get a perfect on this test. I recommend that you check out our digital SAT prep course. We are looking for beta testers right now to help us test some of the material that we're going to be putting into the course. If you're interested in, for example, getting free access to a practice test or some math drills and things like this, and that sounds appealing, be sure to reach out to us, supertutortv.com/beta. We also have private tutoring as well as sometimes group classes online. So be sure to check out supertutortv.com for all the awesome things we offer. We also have an ACT prep course. We have 2 ACT math books, and we do college essay coaching as well. So number 1, be a calculator ninja. Now here's what's really cool about the digital SAT. You now not only get access to a calculator that you can bring from home, but you can also use the built-in Desmos calculator, which is extremely powerful. I am literally scratching my head and wondering when the College Board is going to figure out that you can totally blow through several math questions per test just on Desmos alone in crazy ways. Let's take a look. Negative 3x squared plus 20x minus 24 is the first equation. 2x plus b is the second equation. And for this given system, b is a constant. And for what value of b do the graphs intersect at exactly 1 point? Now, if we wanted to solve this a traditional way, we might set these two equal to each other and then figure out, oh, we have a quadratic. And if I want a single solution to that quadratic, what needs to happen? Oh, I have to have a discriminant that is 0. Right? Because then I will get a single solution. So that's the traditional way to solve it. And look at my lengthy explanation here, blah, blah, blah. Here's my Desmos solution, guys, and let's look at it in action. So if you go to desmos.com, you can actually pull up the exact calculator that you will see on the SAT. You just go to test practice, and then you choose graphing calculator, you choose assessment, and you go to College Board. There it is, DSAT, SAT, etc. Now here's the magic. I'm going to put plus B. And then guess what happens? This cool little thing pops up and it says, add slider. And you click add slider and then watch this, you guys. I just slide it up, so I can trace it. Oh yeah, see, I'm on the red line, it's 3.9. I can switch to the blue line, 3.9. Boom, I'm on both lines. Done. So easy. I hope I have convinced you to learn Desmos. I also highly recommend that you get on calculator programs and you get a TI-84. TI-84 is my favorite because it's programmable and you can put slope intercept. There's a lot of really useful things. I'm not gonna get into those because I have several other videos on how to work your calculator mojo. So look at the thumbnails here, go check out those videos to work your calculator mojo, but that's number 1, be a calculator ninja. Okay, number 2, the other thing that you need to know how to do is every math problem in multiple ways. Remember, we're talking about a perfect score here. I have taken the SAT an embarrassing number of times as an adult. I have always gotten a perfect score on the math. And one of my secret tricks is not never making a mistake, but always catching my mistakes. And one way that I do that is 1, I have the ability to complete the test very quickly. And then 2, I can do each question twice or sometimes even 3 times. And then I can always approach it in a different way than I did it the first time. And it is extremely rare if you make a careless error on a question that if you redo that question in a different way that you will make the same mistake. It's extremely rare, but if you do it in the same way, it is very probable that you make the same mistake. As long as I can approach something in multiple ways, and you just saw how I approached that question with Desmos, right? If I were going back over it, what I would do is I would take the answer choice, and then it doesn't necessarily mean that I always want to do the problem forwards in multiple ways, but I at least want to be able to double check the question in a way that's different from how I did it. So with that, I might take the 3 and the 9 and plug it in to each of the equations, right? And that would be a second method that I could use for that. And it also speaks to flexibility and problem solving. If I know how to approach something from many different angles, if I can break it into pieces, I'm going to have a much better math brain. I'm going to be adaptable. I'm going to be able to get a perfect score on this. The third tip that I have is to learn math shortcuts. Remember how I talked about I want to do every question twice? Well, the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you can super speed through some of the questions. And the best way to do that is to learn great, awesome shortcuts. Now, here's the good news. The math section of the digital SAT is super similar to the previous paper version. So that means you can use all my math hacks and tips that we already have on our YouTube channel from, even like 6 or 8 years ago. They will still be valid. So check out our math hacks videos, check out our math tips. We'll throw some thumbnails on the screen right now. Go look at those. And we will also link out to several of these. I'll annotate and link out to them in the blog that goes with this video. So if you do want to get on your math hacks, find the blog that goes with this video. The link's in the description. question, and I'm gonna detail out for you, like, here's the videos you guys need to watch to up your game. Cool? Awesome. Number 4, understand vocabulary and nuance. So vocabulary is back on this test in a huge way. 19.3% of the released official Blue Book, which is the practice test app, questions that we have seen involve vocabulary, which is a lot. However, these are not what they used to be on the old versions of the exams. The majority of them do not even have very many hard vocabulary words, and at most they have 2. Most of the time, these questions are difficult, not just because of the difficulty of the words that you're choosing between, but because of the difficulty of the sentences themselves that are constructed, and because of things like double negative. Here is an example. It is by no means blank to recognize the influence of Dutch painter Hieronymus Bosch on Ali Banizder's paintings. What makes this question hard is it is by no means blank. It's sort of this, it is not this to recognize this. The negatives sort of in the pot, right? The use of negatives and things like that, it can get confusing, and then you can kind of trip over yourself and then put the opposite of what you actually want to put. About 3/4 of the questions don't even have hard vocabulary in the vocabulary question, because it's more about the logic and trying to trip you up and making sure that you have everything straight. You need to get good at these questions. You need to understand vocabulary, but you also need to understand nuance. Sometimes you have a couple of words that are similar in some ways, and you need to be able to tell the subtle differences between them. But at the same time, I'm also going to make a caveat. If you want to get a perfect score, here's the thing. 1 or 2 questions per test does have hard vocabulary in it. And so that means just to get that 1 or 2 questions right, you might want to learn a lot of vocabulary. Now, that being said, if you're not actually aiming for a perfect score and you're just like, Brooke, I'm here for entertainment, I just want a 1400, you don't have to necessarily get a vocabulary book. It's not the first line of attack for lower scorers, but if you're aiming for that like 780 plus on the reading, I do recommend that you start to study some vocabulary. I have some vocabulary book recommendations, which I will put in the blog that goes with this video, link in the description. Cool. And number 5, be a punctuation pro. Another type of problem that comes up really often on the reading are what they call boundaries questions. These have to do with mid-sentence punctuation, things like colons, semicolons, dashes, commas, as well as phrases like what's a dependent clause and an independent clause and how do they work together? Is that an adverb? Is it a conjunction, right? You have to know all of this kind of stuff. To be a total grammar pro, you probably need some reinforcement that's beyond, I would say, Khan Academy and the College Board at this point. Right now, Khan Academy only has about 5 practice questions per type of question, which I'm going to be honest, for boundaries is not enough. When it's 12.6% of the test and you've got what? 227 question, right? That's like maybe 1 test worth of practice. It's really not enough. So whether you get a book, whether you get my online course where I'm going to walk you through lots of wicked, tricky boundaries questions, we have little practice sets you can do. Whether you want to use our course as like a digital book of sorts or whether you're going to get a book, you need to be practicing these kind of questions in order to do well. Number 6, I want you to learn how to break things into their logical frameworks. This test is reliant on logic in ways that old SATs were not. It almost reminds me of the LSAT or the MCAT. One particular kind of question that's really challenging is called command of evidence textual questions, and it's asking you which of the following would best support or would most undermine the claim that the author makes. And in order to figure these out, you have to go to the claim and then you have to go to the evidence and you have to step through line by line and figure out what is the logic. Oh, polar bears did this. Because they did this, so-and-so hypothesized that this is true, right? We know that this is true, right? You have to go through and delineate out all the logic and figure out what's the chain of cause and effect. Are there any missing links in that chain, right? You could anticipate the answer before you look over, but you've got to figure out the logic, okay? And you've got to get good at that process. Number 7 is you need to be able to differentiate between answer choices and see nuanced differences. Understanding nuance has always been a skill on the SAT that has come in really handy, and this test is no exception. You have to have a capacity for seeing in nuance. You can't just be going in bold strokes. You have to be able to get into the little tiny details and say, this is slightly better because of this. This is slightly worse because of this, and really edge in to what's going on with the information that you have. So understanding nuance, being able to read things with nuance and really look at it from a detailed perspective. Okay, now I'm getting into sort of more nuts and bolts. Number 8, use real materials and tests. I'm gonna tell you where to get those. Number 1, the Blue Book app. If you don't have the Blue Book app yet, you should get it. There are 4 real official digital tests. You can also do extra time if you happen to have extra time in those. In addition to that, there's one PSAT that's a regular level PSAT. There's also an 8-9 PSAT, which is probably too easy for people trying to get a perfect score, but heck, it's more official information. The other thing that's been released are what we call linear tests. These are PDFs you might find floating around on the internet, and there's 4 of those, but here's the problem with the linear tests. They repeat a lot of items that are on the Blue Book digital tests. So if you are going to scope out the linear tests, I recommend either finding a list of which ones are unique and they're out there, or number 2, you can do the linear test after you've done the Blue Book, and then you can skip over the ones that you recognize. Finally, Khan Academy has some practice items. I will warn you, it is not robust enough to get a perfect score. They maybe have 5 questions per question type, which is just not enough to prep from. So you're going to need more practice material beyond what the College Board offers. And this wasn't necessarily the case in the past, and I don't even necessarily say it's the case. Well, it's a little bit the case with the ACT. Like, I recommend drilling down math and reading. Like with the ACT, for example, I recommend 80% of your material is official tests. It's just not available for the SAT at this point. So that brings me to number 9. And that is, you need to take probably at least 20 practice tests. Of my students who've scored perfectly on the SAT and the ACT, the majority of them have taken over 20 practice tests. I think I only have one that didn't, and he started at like a 1580 cold out the door, which is just crazy. 20 practice tests is usually kind of minimum. I had one girl who got a perfect ACT score. She took like 40. So, and I've certainly had kids like with SAT that are like way up there that have basically burned everything humanly possible. So you should be taking a lot of practice tests if this is your goal. Now, again, caveat, most students who are prepping for the SAT are probably going to take somewhere between 5 and 15 practice tests, not 20 plus, but perfection takes more work. Finally, when you prep for the test, make sure you are always drilling down what you specifically missed and you are finding patterns in your learning and then reinforcing those. That's going to be the most efficient way to prep. So that means you take a practice test, you figure out what you missed, and then you drill it down. In order to do that, again, you need resources beyond Khan Academy and beyond the College Board. How to get those resources? You could buy books. You could also check out, again, our digital SAT course that's going to be coming out soon. Again, we will have lessons on every single type of question. And to boot, you can import your Blue Book tests results, and we will spit out a customized study list based on exactly what you missed and tell you what you need to work on more. And we also do the same process with our own practice tests. We're going to have, I think, initially a handful of practice tests, and then we're hoping to add even more. So if you need more material, we want to be that digital book, that like prep resource. Instead of buying 5 books, buy our course, then you can practice how you play, which is cool, right? And then you can get the score you want. And even if you're not going to buy my course, cool, but you've got to get material to practice with. I hope you guys like this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. We're going to be doing lots more digital SAT material because this is a whole new ballpark, and I'm excited to help you guys out with this test. So make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also find us on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, and we should start a Threads. I'll get on that. Nice to see you guys. Take care and have a good one, and go crush that SAT.